What is up, everybody? My name is Spaz and welcome to Arrow Key Gaming TV. Today I am bringing you another Payday 2 video, and this video is going to focus on a particular skill within the technician tree. And the reason I got focused on this particular skill is because at a certain point I started to notice that my Ryan-filled shotgun was less effective, especially at greater distances. I noticed that it couldn't take down some of the heavier enemies in a single shot from a greater range like it used to be able to. So I wasn't sure if it was one of three things. I didn't know if they had nerfed the shotgun. I searched all the change logs, couldn't find any tweaks for the shotgun. It didn't look like Overkill adjusted it. Whether they have or haven't, I don't know. In the change logs it's not listed, so they may not have, or we don't know if they did something and didn't list it. So I looked there, couldn't find anything there. Then I noticed that they had buffed certain enemies in one of the patches, so I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. But then I started wondering too, since I respec so often, did I forget to spec back into something? Did I forget a certain skill in the enforcer tree that made my shotgun awesome before and now it's not so awesome? So I started looking at that route too, and what I noticed is that at a certain point when I respec'd, I had forgotten to take another look at this sharpshooter skill in the technician tree. And essentially what this sharpshooter skill does is it gives us greater accuracy for all of our single shot, our semi-automatic weapons such as our pistols, our shotguns, and the M308. Now the numbers behind it is that it is supposed to reduce your spread by 50%. So when I found this, I said, well, maybe this is why my Ryan-filled isn't as powerful as it used to be. So I spec'd back into it, played a few games, and granted, yes, there was an improvement, but it didn't feel the same as it did in the past, and I'm not exactly sure if that is because I expected more out of that gun than it actually puts out, or if I'm just spoiled with the 12 gauge, and going back to the Ryan-filled is not as effective or as powerful. But regardless, I wanted to take a more in-depth look at this skill to see if that 50%, I wouldn't say to see if it's accurate, but to kind of take a look at it to see how effective or how useful this skill can be. Granted, they have found in the game files that it is that 50% reduction. You can't argue with that. If it is part of the coding behind the game, obviously it's going to be implemented somehow. But I just wanted to, for my own sake, run a few tests to kind of demonstrate or find out if this is an effective skill, and if so, how effective. So what I had to do is I wanted to basically create a testing environment that would be controlled. I can't test the spread of a weapon in a public match where I have to deal with cops. I mean, you can't recreate the same thing over and over. So I said, all right, well, we got to go to the safe house and figure this out. And initially I had walked up to the line, picked a spot, shot, took a screenshot, shot again, took a screenshot. And the problem was that at this range, I couldn't really accurately, it wasn't visually easy to demonstrate just how big of a difference there was in the spread. So I said, oh, I need a little bit more range. And so I said, okay, well, if I go up against this wall and I push into the corner and I aim at the same spot and I fire and I rebound my keys to where mouse movement isn't going to affect what I'm doing here, because all I need to do is recreate the same thing over and over. So what I did is I would fire a shot, walk up to the line using my keyboard, not touching the mouse, take a screenshot, walk back to the original place where I took a shot, fire another round, walk back up, take a screenshot, go back, do the same thing. And the reason I did this and I didn't do multiple shots is every now and then on certain surfaces within the game there is no hit detection. So I said, well, if we're going to do the test, we've got to make a commitment to do this the right way. And you can imagine how long it took me to get 50. I did basically 50 shots with the 45 pistol and the M308, and 20 shots with the Ryan-filled, which is effectively 100 pellet rounds. I did that with each weapon, and did them with the skill and without the skill. I compiled all those screenshots of where these shots were hitting, and I put markers where they were hitting with the skills and without the skill to give a to actually show a the spread on a screenshot. And I will fast forward to these screenshots and we'll take a look at them and kind of examine just how much the skill really does come into play. So when I compiled all these screenshots together, I obviously separated them by weapon, but then I further separated them into whether or not that round was fired with the skill or without the skill. And then I gave each of those rounds, skill, not skill, a color. In this screenshot, the blue denotes that the round was fired without the skill enabled. And the first impression that I took away from all of this was that there is a lot to say about the accuracy of a weapon, and it's refreshing to know that, because I had thought that there were some pretty big hit detection issues in this game, and having run these tests, it may not necessarily even be hit detection. The accuracy of the weapon may have a lot to say about why we're not scoring headshots, why sometimes it seems like we aren't shooting things. That's not to say that there may not be some hit detection problems in the game. There probably are. There are with all games. But this is refreshing to know that this is going to be a large bulk of why we aren't hitting things sometimes. Because take a look at this. I mean, we weren't that far away with the pistol, and that spread's pretty big. So to say that every time we aim for a headshot and it's not hitting and we gripe about it, right? We'll look at the spread of the weapon. It doesn't say we're going to every time. The majority of the time, should we? Sure, but there are outlying rounds that don't even come close. So the blue here represents a round fired without the skill, and then I went ahead and plotted all the skill shots, and I put it in an overlay on top of this round to kind of compare the two spreads. So here is the shots fired with the skill, and at first you can kind of see that it is a little bit tighter of a grouping. So I went ahead, and what I did is in Photoshop I created a perimeter of the furthest shots away from the spread on the no skill captures, and from that I was able to create a box of the actual spread. Okay, well, every shot you know, ended up within this box, and what I did is I said, okay, so the skill's supposed to be it's supposed to reduce our spread by 50%. So I took half of the value of that box and created a second box, giving us the initial spread and then the supposed reduced spread, where we should have seen all of our shots fired. And if you look in this screenshot, it's fairly accurate. The majority of our shots fired while the skill was enabled now fall within that tighter hit area. Now, is this 100% accurate? No. I mean, could I have plotted all this out on an XY axis and come up with a, you know, well, this is the given range, blah, blah. Yeah, I could have, but I'm not going to do that when I can just demonstrate it as well doing this. But the overall point is that it's not hogwash. I don't know if you know what that phrase means, but the skill actually does what it's supposed to do. So that 45 was fairly inaccurate, but our accuracy improved, it looks like 50% with that skill enabled. So, and now we'll take a look at the 308. Now, this was a hard one because this rifle is so accurate to begin with that I didn't have an environment long enough to really get a bigger spread to really represent the groupings. But let's just take a quick look at it. The blue is the initial no skill grouping, and then the green here is the shots fired with the skill. And if we zoom in and create a box, and on this one I created the same thing. Okay, I took the spread of the initial grouping without the skill, took half the value, and I went ahead and I made it into a red box here just because that grouping is so compact, and the plot points become kind of mesh, you know, like put together, and you can't really differentiate between shots. But it looks like that spread did come down quite a bit, and it is fairly close to being 50% reduced spread. pretty interesting stuff. So now let's take a look at a shotgun. And then, for example, I use the Reinfeld. And another first impression thing here is, wow, that's a lot of pellets in a big spread from distance, which is awesome, right? The accuracy or the realism of a shotgun is being somewhat represented here. And the other thing that I would point out is that when I was doing these individual screenshots, not all the pellets even came close to the center. Sometimes they'd be all on top. Sometimes, and there's 5 pellets per round, just to point that out. Sometimes they'd be all on top. Sometimes they would be in an angle. Sometimes they were just spread everywhere. So it's pretty obvious why sometimes when you're engaging an enemy with a shotgun at distance, you're not scoring hits. You're not even coming close to damaging them. So this is the blue here. This is without the skill. Now here's the overlay with the skill. Much tighter, especially around the center. It doesn't look like there's that big of a difference initially, but when you kind of zoom in on the differences, or on the two groupings, you can see, yes, there are outlying pellets that didn't fall within that 50%, but the large bulk, the majority, what we're looking for is a greater accuracy, and it is. There are less outlying rounds with that skill enabled, giving us better accuracy. Especially, it's crucial for the shotgun if we are going to engage at distance. But that's pretty much this video in a nutshell. I wanted to just give you a in-depth look at that skill, and my final thoughts on it is that it is definitely worth that 1 skill point, especially as we get up at higher levels. I think there are some pretty valid skills in the technician tree, and if you are wanting to improve your accuracy, well, then it's well worth that 1 point. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this kind of in-depth look, or any questions in general, I guess, you could put it in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to reply. But like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it kind of gives us a better understanding of how this skill is working. There's been a lot of confusion on the forums as to how it works, so hopefully we've clarified a few things here. But other than that, please remember to comment, rate, and subscribe, and we will catch you guys in the next video. Talk to you later.